Hello and welcome back aboard Narrowboat Gentian, where I am moored just outside Braunston, and I thought I would do a DIY update. For you may recall the last time I did some DIY on the boat, things were left on something of a cliffhanger when I had taken the water pump out, done nothing to it, put it back, and yet suddenly it didn't work because there was no voltage to the pump. That has now been sorted, and I will explain what went wrong. The water pump and the accumulator and the filter live here underneath one of the front seats, and they come bolted onto this back plate as a single unit. So I disconnected that and that, pulled the whole thing out, discovered that I can't adjust the cut-in pressure of the pump because it's just a simple spring, so I put it all back. And when I put it back, there was suddenly no voltage on those pins. A lot of people came up with suggestions in the comments which ranged from very sensible to the frankly absurd. A lot of people initially saying, well, you don't measure the voltage on those pins because you may not have got the wire in there properly, etc. Don't worry, I had taken the wires off and measured the voltage on the wires themselves, and there was no voltage, so that was not the issue. But how can it be? How can it be that just taking something out and putting it back again had suddenly made the wiring go faulty when I hadn't touched the wiring? I don't think anybody making their guesses in the comments actually got the correct reason, and the correct reason for the error is an idiot. Yes, this one. Somehow, and I'm still a bit puzzled about this, I had disconnected the pump's wiring in the switch panel over there. Yes, at the back of the boat. I'd pulled off the clip in the switch. But this doesn't make sense because I'd have only gone messing about with the switch when I discovered there was no voltage on the thing. But I wouldn't have had no voltage on the thing if I hadn't gone messing around with the switch. So it's a chicken and egg situation that I can't quite resolve. However, that was the problem. You see, there is the switch panel, and you can see the freshwater pump switched on, and on the back of that is just a couple of push-on connectors that send the positive voltage through to the pump, and I'd pulled one of them off. I can understand why I'd have done that if I was trying to diagnose there was no voltage, but if the clip had been on to start with, there would have been voltage, so I wouldn't have pulled the clip off. Do you see what I mean? It's madness. However, I put it back on again, and lo and behold, the pump is now working. So we are back to square one. The pump works, but the cut-in pressure of the pressure switch is still too low. And because it's just a simple mechanical spring, it's not realistically going to be feasible to alter it. So I'm either going to live with it as it is, or possibly look into buying a completely separate pressure switch that will go elsewhere in the pipework, and that can then feed back and control the pump. People who are saying, well, your accumulator pressure is wrong. No, that's downstream of the pump. It's nothing to do with the cut-in pressure of the pump, so that's not the issue. However, I've got a working water pump now, so that is good. There have been other advances in the DIY, which I'm very excited to show you. And those advances are out here. Let us go to the front of the boat and look at... Ooh, look! I've fitted the solar panel. Look at that. As you can see, it's on little aluminium brackets, secured with P-clips, one on each corner, and it is absolutely tight, not going anywhere. All good. Which just goes to prove that I do listen to people making suggestions in the comments, because if there was one suggestion that was overwhelmingly made, it was use P-clips to mount your solar panel. There's a little close-up detail for you. You can see I just got this L-shaped aluminium rail, trimmed it off a bit to make it less catchy as I go by. P-clips, and just holding it all in place nice and securely. And it doesn't obstruct use of this rail. Various people saying, oh, you'll not be able to use your rail if you mount anything onto it, but yes, I can. I mean, there's that tiny bit doesn't matter. That is all fine. And look how well that panel fits. And it doesn't seem to be obscured by the pole or anything, which just hangs in there, or by the cratch board, and it is working well. And that's the other thing I've installed, the 4G antenna on its pole with the wiring going with the solar wiring into where the old TV antenna used to be. You can see I have replaced the old circular TV antenna that was there with that, what do you call that kind of box? An inlet junction box? I don't really know. Either way, it only had 2 inlets on it, so I drew holes in the side and put 2 more of those glands on. So I've got the aerial, 4G aerial ones coming in there and the solar ones coming in there, and they all go down the same hole into the boat. The existing hole was only about a pencil width, so it was not big enough, so I did have to get my hole saw and drill a bigger hole through the aluminium of the boat. That is a tad nerve-wracking when you are drilling a hole through the boat, and you know that you need to get the work done that same day, because you can't just leave a hole in the boat in case it rains. But I did it, and I put the, whatever you call that inlet box thing down, and all the wires through, and connected it all up, and it was working fine. And then the next morning, I realised I couldn't actually tighten up the cable glands properly because the holes were ever so fractionally off by about 1 millimetre. So later that week, I came back and remade the whole thing, pulled the original cable gland thing off, restuck it down, got rid of the old glue. You can imagine a bit more bad language involved when I realised that. But there we go, it's now in and all working. Obviously, in doing so, I have exposed the raw aluminium of the boat, but that's okay. I mean, as I took the old TV aerial off, a load of this paint just came up with it anyway. It had been sealed on. I have now bought some etch primer, undercoat, and some gentian blue paint, so I'll hopefully be able to touch this up as well as many of the other bits around the boat. And there were a handful of folk who said, oh, don't run your solar wires down the same hole as the one that the 4G antenna comes down, it'll all interfere with each other. It doesn't seem to be having any such effect. I'm getting wonderful 4G reception now, and the solar panel's working fine as well, so that's all good. The cables come in there, as you can see, and the white ones go off into my internet router, into which I have put a multi-network SIM card that chooses the strongest signal, which is good as you move along. And then you can also see the solar panel wires there go down behind the router and into the cupboard below. And incidentally, the little black box behind the router is a 12 volt to 5 volt converter, which is fed by the cable you can see with the ducting behind it that I put in, which is running off that switch panel. AUX 1 now switches on the router. And in the cupboard below, the solar wires come down, they go through a simple on-off switch to disconnect the panels if I ever need to, and then they go down and round, and there, long-time viewers will recognise the original solar controller from my old boat, Rayland. And then, of course, the power comes out of that into this ducting which I added and goes round there, and there is a hole up there that the existing wires went through to the battery bay, and I just about managed to force this extra cabling through to take the solar power, which was lucky. And those wires which go through to the engine bay then of course connect to the leisure battery and charge it up. And it's only a small solar panel. It doesn't have to be big though. This is a weekend and short trips boat, and it really only needs to put a bit of power back in the battery to run the fridge. The fridge is the biggest consumer of power on the boat. The lights are LED, charging my phone up takes almost nothing, and pretty much the fridge is the only other electrical thing here. That's the biggest draw. So as long as the solar panel can put a few amps back in to run that, and let's face it, I'll be running the fridge mostly in summer when there is going to be sunny days. And yes, only 100 watts. What's that? Perhaps 10 amps, absolutely flat out on a perfect day. Let's say 6 or 7. That is enough to run the fridge. So it should be absolutely perfect, and it's running fine at the moment. And that means that above the dining area, I now have another bit that long-term viewers will recognise, the old control panel for that, which says I've got a very happy battery, 13.9 volts, 1 amp going in. It's fully charged, so the solar is doing nothing effectively, even though it's a nice sunny day because the battery is currently full. But it's all good. When I plugged this all back in, I was really very surprised to find it had remembered its configuration from when I took it off my old narrowboat, and that was about a year before I sold the narrowboat, which itself was about 3.5 years ago. So it had remembered its configuration from 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know why I'm surprised. I suppose it writes it to some sort of memory, but I was a little surprised. I thought it would have completely reset itself, but Well done, little unit. You remembered how you used to be set up. Of course, I then gave it a full reset because it needed to be different parameters for this battery, but I thought that was impressive. There is one other improvement I've done here. You can't really class this as DIY, but it's an improvement to the boat, and that is, we open up the gas locker. Hang on. Oh, look! Not just one gas bottle anymore, but 2 gas bottles. So I've added a second one, so if the first one runs out, I need not have a problem. You would not believe the difficulty of squeezing the second gas bottle in, because when that first one was there, and I tried to put the second one in, I suddenly realised it would not go in, and I had to disconnect the first one from its regulator, tip it over, push it to the side, and then there was just enough space to get that one in. Overall, I am quite pleased with those little bits of DIY progress. Yes, they might look like small improvements to you, but they are big quality of life improvements to me. Having a nice 4G antenna that actually gets a strong signal and gives me a bit of Wi-Fi in the boat. I know the whole idea of narrowboating is to escape from everyday life, but I do still need to stay in touch, and occasionally you just want to sit and watch a movie on the iPad or something, so it's good to have a strong signal, because the place where I'm moored at the moment, it is absolutely shocking. Also, little solar panel, I'm just so pleased with how it fits perfectly in that spot, and it's enough to run the fridge. It means I can go out on the boat and just relax, not need to run the engine to charge the battery if I want to stay out for a couple of days. Plus that extra gas bottle, now it's no longer a crisis if the gas suddenly runs out. Just switch to the other one, and that gives me plenty until such time as I can get a refill. These are things that just take a little weight off your mind. There is plenty more still to do on the boat. I've got a long list of DIY jobs, but for the moment, that is it. Thank you very much for watching, and cheerio.